Verified incident logs. Authentic footage. Pure accountability. Welcome to Bodycam Incident Reports.
Drop it! Step back! Don't say another word!
Officer, those are bolt cutters. This is my property.
I don't care what you claim. You fit the call.
Check my wallet. Deed. ID.
You're making a serious mistake.
Turn around. Stand on the door. Now, I am the owner, and this is on your body cam.
The shout shattered the quiet of the Tuesday morning, bouncing off the corrugated metal walls of the storage units. It wasn't a request. It was a threat delivered with the kind of adrenaline-fueled aggression that usually precedes violence. But the man at the receiving end of the order didn't drop. He didn't flinch. He simply stood there, a heavy pair of bolt cutters in his right hand resting by his thigh. His posture straight, his eyes calm. Marcus Thorne was 54 years old. He had spent 25 of those years in the United States Army, retiring with the rank of major. He had led men through the deserts of Iraq and the mountains of Afghanistan. He had organized logistics for battalion-sized movements under mortar fire. He knew what authority sounded like, and he knew the difference between a command and panic. The man screaming at him, a police officer who looked young enough to be his son, was panicked. "I am asking you to lower your voice." Officer Marcus set his tone level, the baritone rumble of a man who rarely needed to shout to be heard. He wore a faded navy blue Detroit Lions cap, a canvas Carhartt jacket that had seen better days, and work boots covered in dust. He looked like a laborer. He looked like a man who worked with his hands. He did not look, at least to the officer's eyes, like the owner of the 3-acre secure guard storage facility he was standing in. "Drop the weapon. Drop it." Officer Derek Vance had his hand on his holster, the retention strap already unsnapped. His chest was heaving. Marcus slowly bent his knees, placing the bolt cutters gently on the asphalt. He didn't throw them. He placed them. Then he stood back up, dusting his hands on his jeans. "They're bolt cutters, son. I'm fixing the latch on Unit 42. If you'll let me reach into my back pocket, I can show you the deed to this property and my identification. Don't you move. You keep your hands where I can see them." Vance advanced his stride, stiff, his eyes locked on Marcus's waistline. "I got a call about a break-in in progress. You fit the description. Trespassing, possession of burglary tools. You're done." "I own this facility," Marcus repeated, enunciating every syllable. "I bought it 2 weeks ago. I am currently inspecting my property. You are making a mistake that is going to be very difficult for you to undo." "I don't care what you say, you own." Vance spat back now, only 10 feet away. "Right now you're a suspect. Turn around. Face the unit." Marcus looked at the officer. He saw the nameplate D. Vance. He saw the sweat on the man's brow, despite the cool March breeze. He saw a man who had already decided how this story was going to end. Marcus had trained young soldiers who looked just like this, eager for action, short on judgment, and dangerous because of it. But those soldiers were in a war zone. This was a storage lot in suburban Ohio. "I am complying," Marcus said, turning slowly to face the orange metal door of the storage unit. "But I want you to remember that I told you this. I am the owner. You are trespassing on my land. To understand how a decorated veteran ended up facing the barrel of a gun on his own commercial property, we have to look at the phone call that started it all. Before we get into the mind of the manager who made that call, tell us in the comments, do you think property owners should have to carry their deeds with them just to perform maintenance on their own land?" Braden Cole watched the scene unfold from the safety of the main office window, his heart hammering against his ribs. At 29 years old, Braden had been the on-site manager of Secure Guard for 3 years. He was a stickler for rules, or at least he was a stickler for his version of them. He kept the office immaculate, he color-coded the filing cabinets, and he prided himself on knowing every tenant by sight. But he didn't know Marcus Thorne. When Braden had arrived at work that morning at 8 a.m., he had seen the black Ford F-150 parked near the rear gate. He didn't recognize the truck. When he looked at the security monitors, he saw a black man in old work clothes walking down row D with a pair of massive bolt cutters. Braden's mind didn't go to maintenance. It didn't go to new owner. The corporate office had sent an email a week ago mentioning that the facility had been sold to a holding company, Thorn Logistics LLC. But Braden assumed the new owner would be a guy in a suit who showed up in a Mercedes to look at spreadsheets, not a guy in work boots cutting locks. In Braden's world, men who looked like Marcus didn't own million-dollar storage facilities. They broke into them. He hadn't bothered to check the gate logs. If he had, he would have seen that the master code, the one only the owner and the fire department possessed, had been used to open the main gate at 7:45 a.m. He hadn't bothered to walk out and ask the man what he was doing. Instead, Braden had felt that familiar tightening in his chest, that mixture of fear and self-righteousness that he told himself was vigilance. He had picked up the phone and dialed 911. 911. What is your emergency? I have an intruder at Secure Guard Storage on Route 9. Braden had said, his voice trembling with manufactured urgency. He's got bolt cutters. He's moving from unit to unit. I think he's cutting locks. Is he threatening anyone? Is he armed? He has the bolt cutters, Braden said. Those are heavy. He looks aggressive. He's loitering in the back row. I'm the manager, and I didn't authorize anyone to be back there. I need an officer now. I don't feel safe. Okay, sir. We have a unit nearby. Stay inside and lock the doors. Braden had hung up feeling a surge of power. He was protecting the facility. He was doing his job. He watched through the blinds as Officer Vance's cruiser squealed into the lot lights, flashing silently. He saw the officer draw his weapon. He saw the black man put his hands up. For a second, a cold sliver of doubt pierced Braden's confidence. The man wasn't running. He wasn't acting like the meth heads who sometimes tried to jump the fence. He was standing there with a strange, calm dignity. But Braden pushed the thought away. He doesn't belong here, Braden thought. I know who belongs here, and he isn't one of them. Officer Derek Vance had been with the department for 6 years, and in that time he had built a reputation. Unfortunately, it wasn't the kind of reputation that wins community service awards. At 32, Vance was part of a clique of officers who referred to themselves as the sheepdogs, viewing every citizen as a potential wolf and themselves as the only line of defense. He had 4 complaints in his file, 2 for discourtesy, 1 for excessive force during a traffic stop, and 1 for profiling. All of them had been unfounded or unsustained by internal affairs. The department was understaffed, the union was strong, and Vance produced arrests. He was proactive. His sergeant, a man who just wanted to make it to retirement without a scandal, often told Vance to tone it down, but never actually wrote him up. When the dispatch call came through suspicious mail burglary in progress, subject armed with large metal tool, Vance's pulse spiked. This was what he lived for. Not filling out paperwork, not mediating neighbor disputes, but catching bad guys in the act. He didn't check the premise history. He didn't wait for backup. He pulled his cruiser up to the gate, punched in the police override code, and gunned it toward the back of the lot. When he saw Marcus Thorne, Vance didn't see a 54-year-old businessman. He didn't see a veteran. He saw a suspect. He saw a threat. The man was large, broad-shouldered, and holding a heavy steel object. In Vance's mind, the narrative was already written. Suspect caught red-handed potential assault with a deadly weapon if he swings those cutters. Vance slammed the car into park and bailed out, hand already gripping his Glock 17. The fact that Marcus placed the cutters down so calmly didn't de-escalate Vance. It confused him, and confusion made Vance angry. In his experience, criminals either ran or fought. They didn't stand there and lecture him about property deeds. I own this facility. The words echoed in Vance's head as he approached, but they didn't register as truth. They registered as the audacity of a criminal trying to bluff his way out of cuffs. Vance had heard it all before. I'm borrowing my cousin's car. These aren't my pants. I'm just holding this for a friend. I own this facility, was just the latest lie. And Vance wasn't going to be the rookie who fell for it. Turn around! Now Vance barked, closing the distance to 5 feet. He holstered his weapon, but immediately unclipped his taser, a clear signal that he was ready to escalate pain if he didn't get instant submission. Officer Marcus set his back now to Vance, hands raised in the air, palms open. I have a key to every unit in this row on a ring in my pocket. I have the corporate credit card in my wallet. My name is on the sign out front, or it will be once the painters get here tomorrow. You are about to humiliate yourself. Shut up. Vance stepped in close, grabbing Marcus's left wrist and twisting it up behind his back with unnecessary force. You're under arrest for trespassing and possession of burglary tools. Trespassing on my own land, Marcus said, wincing slightly as the torque on his shoulder increased. He didn't pull away. He didn't resist. He let his body go loose, a technique he had learned decades ago to prevent injury when being handled by someone incompetent. Check my ID. It's in my back right pocket. Just check the ID. I'll check your ID when you're in the cell. Vance grunted, slamming the handcuffs onto Marcus's wrists. The metal bit into the skin. Vance tightened them click, click, click until they were snug against the bone. It was a petty move, a power move. A few rows over a young couple tenants loading a mattress into a van had stopped what they were doing. The woman had her phone out. She was recording. "Hey," the husband shouted. "He's been here all morning fixing the gates. He let us in." Vance whipped his head around. "Back off. This is an active crime scene. Stay by your vehicle or you're next." Marcus now, handcuffed and facing the orange metal door, spoke loud enough for the camera to hear. "My name is Marcus Thorne. I am the owner of Secure Guard Storage. I am being arrested by Officer Vance of the City Police Department. I have offered identification and proof of ownership, and he has refused to look at it." I said, "Shut your mouth." Vance grabbed Marcus by the collar of his Carhartt jacket and yanked him backward, spinning him around to march him toward the patrol car. Braden Cole came out of the office then. He walked tentatively toward the scene. Vance saw him. "You the manager?" Vance shouted. "Yeah." Braden said, his voice smaller than he expected. He looked at Marcus. Marcus looked back. The gaze wasn't angry. It was disappointed. It was the look a father gives a child who has broken something valuable simply because they were careless. "I'm the one who called," Braden said. He was cutting the locks. "This man is your boss, son," Marcus said to Braden. "I'm the managing partner of Thorne Logistics. I signed your paycheck approval yesterday." Braden's face went white. The blood drained out of him so fast he almost fainted. Thorne Logistics. The email. I didn't know," Braden stammered. "You didn't check in at the office." "I own the building," Marcus said. "I don't check in. You check in with me." Vance wasn't listening. He didn't want to hear it. He had the suspect in cuffs. He had the witness. He opened the back door of the cruiser and shoved Marcus inside. To Vance, the manager's hesitation looked like intimidation. He thought Marcus was scaring the witness. "Don't listen to him," Vance told Braden. "He's just trying to get in your head." "I got him. You'll need to come down to the station to give a formal statement." "Okay," Braden said. But he wasn't looking at Vance. He was looking at the bolt cutters lying on the ground. They were brand new, and next to them was a clipboard with a maintenance checklist clearly marked with the company letterhead. Braden realized with a sinking horror that he had just sent his boss to jail. The drive to the precinct was short and silent. Officer Vance blasted the air conditioning, staring straight ahead, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. He felt good. He felt like he had cleaned up the streets a little bit today. In the back seat, Marcus Thorne sat awkwardly, his large frame cramped in the plastic cage. The handcuffs were cutting off circulation to his thumbs. His shoulder ached from the twist, but his mind was razor sharp. He was memorizing the route. He was noting the speed. He was replaying every word Vance had said. Marcus wasn't just a soldier. He was a businessman. He understood liability. He understood risk assessment. And he knew that the city he had lived in for 10 years was about to write him a very large check. When they arrived at the precinct, Vance pulled Marcus out of the car, parading him through the sally port and into the booking area. The station was busy. Phones were ringing, officers were typing reports. Sitting behind the high desk was Sergeant Thomas Miller. Miller was 58, 4 years older than Marcus. He had been a cop for 30 years. He had bad knees, a sharp mind, and zero tolerance for nonsense. He looked up as Vance wrestled Marcus toward the bench. "What do we have?" Vance Miller asked, eyeing the prisoner. He saw a man in work clothes, yes, but he also saw the bearing. The haircut, high and tight gray at the temples. The boots were expensive. The eyes were intelligent. Trespassing possession of burglary tools resisting Vance recited sounding board. Caught him cutting locks at the storage place on Route 9. Manager called it in. Miller looked at Marcus. "You resist, sir." "I did not," Marcus said calmly. "And I am not trespassing. I own the property. I bought it on the 15th of this month. I have tried to tell Officer Vance this 5 times. He refused to check my wallet." Miller paused. His pen stopped moving over the logbook. He looked at Vance. "You check his ID. He didn't have any on him." Vance lied. "Said it was in his truck. I wasn't going to let him go for a weapon." "My wallet is in my back right pocket," Marcus corrected. Officer Vance was too busy twisting my arm to look for it. Miller stood up. He walked around the desk. He was a big man, heavy-set, but he moved with authority. "Turn around," he said to Marcus. Miller reached into Marcus's back pocket and pulled out a worn brown leather wallet. He flipped it open. "Driver's license, Marcus Thorne. Retired military ID. Major U.S. Army." Miller looked up at Marcus, his eyebrows raising. "Thank you for your service, Major." "Thank you." Sergeant Marcus nodded. Miller pulled out another card. It was a Platinum American Express business card. It read, "Thorne Logistics." Miller looked at Vance. The air in the room suddenly got very thin. "Vance, you said he was cutting locks at the storage place." "Yeah, secure guard," Vance said, starting to shift his weight. He sensed the shift in the atmosphere. He had bolt cutters. Miller walked back to his computer. He typed in a query. "Property tax records, 4,450 Route 9. He hit enter. The screen refreshed. Owner of Record Thorne Logistics, LLC. Managing partner, Marcus Thorne. Miller stared at the screen for a long 5 seconds. Then he looked at the timestamp on the deed transfer. 2 weeks ago. He looked at Vance. His face was no longer neutral. It was red. Vance Miller said, his voice dropping to a low, dangerous growl. "You arrested the owner of the building for breaking into his own building." The manager called it in. Vance defended his voice, pitching up. "He said he was an intruder." "How was I supposed to know?" "He told you," Miller shouted, slamming his hand on the desk. The entire booking room went silent. "He told you he was the owner. He told you to check his ID. Did you verify anything? Did you run the plates on his truck? Did you call the owner number listed in dispatch?" I secured the scene," Vance stammered. "You secured a lawsuit, you idiot." Miller walked over to Marcus. He pulled a key from his belt. "Major Thorne, I am going to take these cuffs off, and I am going to apologize. This is a massive failure." Miller unlocked the cuffs. Marcus brought his hands forward, rubbing his wrists. Deep red furrows were etched into his dark skin. "I don't want your apology," Sergeant Marcus said, his voice filling the silent room. "You're a good officer, I can tell. But him." He pointed a thick finger at Vance. "He is a liability. He profiled me. He used excessive force. He ignored exculpatory evidence because he wanted an arrest. He saw a black man in work clothes and decided I was a criminal." Vance stood there, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. The arrogance was gone, replaced by the sickening realization that his career was dangling by a thread. "I want his badge number," Marcus said. "I want the body cam footage preserved immediately. And I want to speak to your watch commander. Now." "Right away," Sir Miller said. He turned to Vance. "Give me your gun and your badge. Go sit in the captain's office. Don't speak to anyone. Sarge, come on, I was just badge gun. Now." Miller barked. Vance slowly unbuckled his belt. His hands were shaking. "If you think officers should be personally liable for damages when they ignore evidence and make wrongful arrests, hit the like button. We need to know where you stand." The fallout was swift, but the battle was just beginning. Marcus Thorne didn't go home that day. He went to the emergency room to document the nerve damage in his thumbs and the strain in his rotator cuff. Then he went to his lawyer. The video from the couple at the storage unit hit the internet by 5:00 p.m. It was titled, "Cop Arrests Owner of Business for Trespassing While Black." It had 200,000 views by dinner. By the next morning, it was national news. The visuals were undeniable. The calm older veteran asking to show ID, the young aggressive officer screaming and twisting his arm. The contrast between dignity and brutality was stark. The city attorney called Marcus's lawyer within 48 hours trying to settle. They offered $100,000. Marcus declined. "This isn't about money," Marcus told his lawyer. "This is about the fact that if I hadn't been a major, if I hadn't had the resources to fight this, I'd be in jail right now with a felony record. That officer is a predator, and the manager who called him is a coward." The lawsuit named the city the police department officer, Vance and Braden Cole. Braden Cole was fired from his position as manager before the lawsuit even hit his desk. Thorne Logistics had a zero-tolerance policy for incompetence, and calling the police on the CEO because of racial bias was the definition of incompetence. Braden tried to argue that he was just following protocol, but the recording of his 911 call where he described Marcus as aggressive and loitering, despite Marcus simply fixing a gate, doomed him. He was let go for cause. Officer Derek Vance fared no better. The internal affairs investigation, fueled by the viral video and the undeniable paper trail of Marcus's ownership, was scathing. They found that Vance had violated 7 department policies, including failure to investigate unlawful arrest and use of force. His previous complaints were reopened. The sheepdog was revealed to be a wolf. 6 months later, Vance was terminated. The state certification board revoked his law enforcement license. He would never carry a badge again. But the city fought the civil rights claim. They argued qualified immunity. They argued that Vance made an honest mistake based on the manager's call. Marcus didn't blink. He took them to depositions. He forced Vance to sit across the table and answer questions about why he didn't check the ID. "Why didn't you check his wallet?" Mr. Vance, Marcus's lawyer, asked. "I felt threatened," Vance mumbled. Threatened by a 54-year-old man standing still with his hands up. He was big, so his size was the threat. Or was it his skin color? Vance didn't answer. He didn't have to. The silence spoke volumes. 10 months after the incident, the city folded. They settled for $1.3 million. Thorne Logistics received a separate settlement from their own insurance regarding the manager's actions, which Marcus promptly donated to a legal defense fund for veterans. 1 year later, on a crisp Tuesday morning, Marcus Thorne drove his truck through the gate of Secure Guard Storage. The sign out front was fresh and clean. The facility was fully rented. He parked in the same spot where he had been arrested. He got out wearing the same Carhartt jacket. He walked over to Unit 42. The latch was working perfectly. He stood there for a moment listening to the wind. He was $1.3 million richer, but he didn't feel triumphant. He felt tired. He thought about Braden Cole, a young man who let bias cloud his judgment and lost his livelihood. He thought about Derek Vance, a man given power he wasn't wise enough to wield, who destroyed his own life because he couldn't admit he was wrong. And he thought about himself. He had served his country for 25 years to protect freedoms that were almost stripped from him in 15 minutes by a man with a badge and a grudge. Marcus looked at his hands. The scars from the handcuffs had faded, but they were still there, faint silver lines against the dark skin. A reminder. Ownership isn't just a piece of paper. It isn't just a deed. Ownership is the right to exist in a space without fear. It's the right to be seen as a person, not a problem. Marcus climbed back into his truck. He had work to do. He was building a logistics empire, and he wasn't going to let anyone stop him. But as he drove away, he checked his rearview mirror just once. A habit. Because he knew now better than ever that no amount of money, no rank, and no deed can fully protect you when the world decides you don't belong. The question we leave you with today is this. If a retired major, a business owner, and a millionaire can be treated like a criminal on his own property, what happens to the man who has none of those titles? What happens to the teenager with a backpack? What happens to you? Justice was served for Marcus Thorne, but how many others are still waiting for theirs? If you believe stories like this need to be told, if you believe that shining a light on injustice is the first step to fixing it, please hit that subscribe button. Share this story. Let's keep the conversation going. Until next time, stay safe and know your rights.
The incident review concludes here. To support continued transparency, kindly like and subscribe. We appreciate you watching Bodycam Incident Reports.